Let's have a little look at question 8 from the 2023 Junior Cycle History exam, which was all about the GAA. Question 8 was worth 57 marks. 36 of the 57 marks, the answers could be found in the sources provided, and then 21 marks went for content that you would have studied in class. Now, it's really important to read the instructions and details for kind of all questions. So this one here, it says the GAA is an example of a sporting, cultural or social movement that impacted on Irish life. Examine the two photographs below and answer the questions that follow. So we have our two photos and then we have questions on the next page. But basically, this tells you that the GAA is an example of a sporting, cultural or social movement, okay? The reason why this is important is because you might have studied a different sporting, cultural or social movement, and that's okay. You just need to be able to kind of match what you studied up with this wording, with this phrasing. So question A reads, how many years separate the camogie matches shown in the two photographs? And there was 3 marks going for this, and then the answer is 104 years, okay? So you can see the date there, 1915, and the date there, 2019. Question B asks, what are 3 differences between the two camogie matches? Use evidence from the photographs to support your answer. So there was 9 marks in total going for this. And you got 3 marks for each. It's incredibly important that you used evidence from both photographs to support each point that you're making. So first off, I've said the women in photo 1 are wearing long skirts while the women in photo 2 are wearing skirts. The next point I made was the women in photograph 1 are not wearing anything on their heads, but the women in photo 2 are wearing protective helmets. And then the final one I've said, the women in photo 1 are wearing white blouses with a neck scarf or tie, and the women in photo 2 are wearing jerseys with their sponsorship logos on the front. And then I've given 2 examples. So again, if we look here, okay, so the women here are wearing long skirts, the women here are wearing skirts, okay, the women here are wearing white blouses with some sort of necktie, down here they're wearing jerseys with their sponsorship logo on it. And the women here are wearing helmets, but the ones up here are not. There's other options that you could have selected as well, but they were just the 3 that I went for. Part C reads, continuity means that things continue as they are and don't change very much. What evidence of continuity exists between the 2 photographs? And there were 6 marks going for this. So it doesn't say how many points to write, so make sure you fill the writing space available. But we know from the marking scheme that they wanted 2 points that were worth 3 marks each. So again, continuity means that things stay as they are. So I've started off by saying, in both photos, the players are using similar hurleys and slitters. Both photos show spectators in the background watching the match. In both photos, the teams are wearing different coloured jerseys to differentiate them from one another. So I have actually included 3 points here, but you only needed 2. Question D reads, number the following developments in GAA history from 1 to 7, beginning with the earliest and ending with the most recent. So this exercise is all about chronological order, and there's 18 marks going for it. You got 3 marks for each correct answer, but you obviously didn't get anything for number 1 because that had been done for you, okay? So everything that you need to answer this is on the page, okay? You just have to look at it and figure out what the correct order is. Question E says, name a sporting, cultural or social movement you studied which has had an impact on Irish life at local or national level. And there was 3 marks going for this. Now, I think a lot of schools would maybe study the GAA. The GAA is the one that I teach. It's also very helpful that these questions and prompts are about the GAA and that they set it up here, okay? But if you haven't studied the GAA, if you studied another group like the Gaelic League, that's okay. You just have to be able to match what you studied up with the terminology that you could be faced with. Question F asks, if you were asked to contribute to a history of the movement you studied, name one event you would focus on and explain why this event deserves to be remembered. Okay, the wording of this I think is a little kind of tricky. It's a little confusing. There's a lot here, but you just have to break it down into the kind of 2 parts it's asking. So the first thing, you identify the event relevant to your movement, okay? So the movement that I selected in the previous question was the GAA. The significant event that I am going to mention or talk about is Bloody Sunday 1920. And I got 3 marks for this out of a possible 6. The other 3 marks then go for my explanation as to why this event deserves to be remembered. And again, 3 marks is on a sliding scale. So you get 3 marks if your answer is very good, 2 marks if it's good, 1 mark if it's poor, 0 marks if it's incorrect. What you can take away from this is, as long as you write something relevant, okay, you can still pick up a mark here or there, even if you're unsure what you have is enough to get you the full 3 marks, okay? In general, when you are writing your historical answers, you need to make sure that everything you write has a fact or a statistic or a keyword or an explanation or a definition, something like that, to ensure you're getting kind of the highest possible marks you can with these sliding scales. So as I mentioned, the event I've selected is Bloody Sunday 1920, and my explanation as to why this event deserves to be remembered is during the War of Independence, Collins' squad killed 14 British spies and informers. In response, the Black and Tans and auxiliaries entered Croke Park and killed 14 people during a match between Dublin and Tipperary. So the reason why I think this deserves to be remembered is because we have 14 civilian people who were killed just because they were attending a match in Croke Park. So our final question, part G, reads, identify 2 different sources you would use to find out about this event. Explain how each source could help your research. So there's a maximum of 12 marks going for this. So you got 3 marks for stating each source, and then 3 marks, a maximum of 3 marks for how this source would help your research. And again, it's marked out of a sliding scale to ensure you get kind of the highest possible marks in these sliding scales. As I mentioned with the last question, you make sure every point you write has a fact or a statistic or a keyword or a definition or an example or an explanation, okay? So the first source that I've selected is a newspaper report about Bloody Sunday. And then I've said, a newspaper report could provide primary source information such as eyewitness descriptions and details about where the British forces entered and how many were there. The second source that I've listed is photographs of the teams involved. So these photos could show the 2 teams that were playing and could show Michael Hogan, the Tipperary player who was killed.